Okay, yeah. Good morning, everybody. Thank you for attending this morning's planning meeting. Today's meeting is being filmed for live and subsequent broadcast by way of the Council's internet site. The images and sound recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. As you will see from the agenda papers, generally the public seating areas are not filmed. However, by entering the meeting room and using the public seating area, you are consenting to being filmed and to the possible use of these images and sound recordings for webcasting and or training purposes. Proposed public speakers have been made aware of the broadcasting arrangements prior to this meeting. Will members please use their microphones to contribute to the meeting, and please remember to switch off the microphone when you are finished. Members dialing in remotely, please turn on your cameras for the duration of the committee as requested by the Planning Department. Also, could you ensure that you refrain from using any mobile devices during the committee and that any devices are on silent? Thank you. We've got two apologies. Councillor Jones, three Jones, Councillor Jordan and Councillor Pym. Do we have any declarations of interest at this point? I have one, and I'll be removing from the chair, and Councillor Harvey will take over when I leave the meeting. Thank you. We have minutes of the previous meeting on page 3 to 6. Is that true account? Yes? Seconder? Councillor Perkins? Councillor William Ripley? Okay. Right, first item on the agenda, pages 16 to 25. This is application number 26/0114. The site is Easewell Park Road, Newport, MP19HES. The ward is in Beechwood, and the proposal is for internal reconfiguration from a 5-bedroom house in multiple occupation, Class 4, to a 6-bedroom HMO, maximum capacity 6 occupants, use again Class C4. Councillor Horton, could you put your camera on, please? Oh, yeah, this one. Okay. Okay. Right, where was I? Oh, we have presenting officer is Joanne Davidson, East Area Development Officer. We also have a ward member speaking, Councillor Davis.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Good morning. Okay, this application seeks planning permission for use of the property as a 6-bedroom HMO to be occupied by 6 people. The application has been called to Planning Committee by Councillor Deb Davis, who has expressed concerns for the impact of the proposal on parking in the area. Number 5 Easewell Park Road is a large semi-detached property near the junction of St John's Road and a short distance from Bachelor Road and its junction with St John's Road. The site is situated to the north of Chepstow Road. The location of the appeal site can be regarded as sustainable, situated close to shops, services, areas of employment, community and recreational facilities for walking, cycling, and located near to bus stops serving the city centre. The existing property and the proposed development provide no off-street parking, and the parking demand would be accommodated on the street. Easewell Park Road and surrounding streets have no parking restrictions in place, and the majority of residents park their vehicles on the street, with the exception of a few off-road driveways and garages. The site history in this case is particularly important and relevant. It includes a lawful use as a HMO for 6 occupants that officers advise is the fallback position and must be given substantial weight in your considerations. The relevant application history is at section 2 of the officer report, and you'll note that consent for the existing HMO was given at appeal with no restriction on occupancy level. As the use consented falls within use class C4, maximum occupancy under this use class is 6 people. So to clarify, the property has the benefit of planning permission as a HMO, and this permission has been implemented, and the property is being used as a HMO for 6 occupants. The approved and implemented scheme has 5 bedrooms, one of which is a double room. The property has an extant HMO licence, you can see it on the screen, for 5 bedrooms that can be occupied by 6 residents. The application being considered today is a full planning application for the development set out in the application description that the Chair read out, and whilst the usual HMO considerations have been included in your agenda reports, the primary issues in officer view are not matters of HMO concentration or parking, as the occupancy level does not change. Instead, the primary issue is the amenity standards of the 6th bedroom and its suitability for a single occupant, alongside the impact of a 6th bedroom and associated internal changes on the amenity of other occupiers of the premises. There are no external alterations proposed. A cycle store has already been sited at the rear patio. Waste is stored to the side and is no different to the previous use, and the internal configuration of the ground floor and all existing bedrooms are the same as the approved scheme. Communal lounge, kitchen and outdoor spaces were recently inspected and are all in use as part of the existing HMO and are in good order. The slide you're looking at now shows the existing layout of the HMO. So you can see there on the ground floor, kitchen, living room, 1 bedroom. 3 bedrooms currently and a shared bathroom at 1st floor and an attic room with ensuite. The proposed, the difference is where you can see the arrow, where we add a 6th bedroom with a slight adjustment to the partition wall, separating it from the shared bathroom. As I say, the only change occurs at 1st floor, where a storeroom is to be removed and an internal wall shared with a shared bathroom is to be moved to create a new 6th bedroom that meets or exceeds minimum licensing floor space standards of 6.51 square metres. This has the impact, as I say, of marginally reducing the floor space of the shared bathroom, which will retain existing sanitary ware but reduce the width of the sink unit. Officers have considered the impact of such internal changes upon existing and future occupiers and consider the works acceptable. The bathroom will still provide all amenities expected of such a space, and it is noted that a 2nd WC is located at ground floor, and the attic bedroom has the benefit of an ensuite. Bathroom facilities in the premises are acceptable and compliant with HMO licence requirements. The plan you're looking at on the screen there is a close-up of the 6th bedroom on the bottom and the amended bathroom layout on the top. The intention of that slide is to show how such a bedroom could look with furniture added, and the same with the bathroom with its revised layout. The 6th bedroom will be of square plan with a large rear-facing window. Offering outlook and natural light. So I'm just trying to move the slide on to show you a photo. There you go. Its layout can accommodate a single bed, a table, and space to store clothes. So again, what you're looking at there on the right is the current storeroom unaltered, and on the left, the current bathroom unaltered. You'll recall I mentioned the plan of the applicant is to reduce what is currently quite a wide sink unit to a more standard sink unit when they move the partition wall on the right-hand side in the bathroom. The occupant will have the benefit of shared space internally and externally that include a lounge, which is on the screen now, and a kitchen with sitting and dining space benefiting from natural light in good proportions, and the kitchen having access to a rear patio where bike storage, outdoor rotary dryer and opportunities for outdoor seating exist. The addition of the sixth bedroom will not increase occupancy levels, and officers consider that it will not increase on-road parking demand. The concentration of HMOs in the area is unaffected by this proposal. It is recommended the application be granted, subject to the stated conditions. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Joanne. Members? Oh, sorry. Yeah, we do. Councillor Davis? Sorry.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you for the opportunity being afforded me to speak this morning. It's really appreciated. My concerns are in regards to parking, and that doesn't change. Parking in the specific areas absolutely increased in the last few years. I feel that a parking survey, and I want to note, was undertaken actually in 2018 for the purpose of appeal. Firstly, I'll always state this, I always consider, and I have concerns about parking surveys that have been undertaken by the applicant themselves, because I do have a concern in regards to their objectivity. However, what my concern is the point that the parking survey was undertaken in 2018, and that's 8 years ago. It does not reflect the increase in parking that we actually see in that area at this particular point in time. The parking has absolutely increased. Numbers of cars and car ownership has increased, as well as the size of cars. I actually myself was in that area on Sunday. I deliberately went to visit the area. I couldn't find a parking space. Parking within the area is not, it's the narrowness of the roads that's the additionality of the problem. So you see parking across pavements, and that's down through St John's Road, which Easewell, number 5, drops straight down onto St John's Road, as well onto Easewell Park Road, which is an incredibly steep hill, one of our steepest hills in Newport, and you have to allow movement. You cannot park on those bends because of movement of traffic. It's a very, very dangerous road. It worries me about the intensity of parking that we already see in that area. I'd also challenge the point being made about the increase of car ownership within a shared property. I would personally assume that if you've got a shared room, potentially that's a couple who would probably only have one car, whereas 6 individual rooms would potentially then increase the ownership of cars, because each individual would own a car themselves, and that would put that additional pressure in that area where already parking is at a premium. And those are my concerns. My concerns are for the residents who live in that area, who already find it very, very hard to find a parking space, and often tell me oftentimes that they have to park elsewhere in other parts of the area, not immediately in the vicinity of their house. And those are my concerns. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Okay, the members. Any questions? Oh, Councillor Watkins.
Thank you, Chair. With the development of the extra bedroom, does that mean there's going to be a reduction of the double bedroom, which is now being used, or not? What I'm concerned about is the property being used in the end for 7 people and not 6.
Yeah, no problem. It can only be used by 6 because use class C4 has that limit. If they progress to occupy as 7, contrary to their licence, contrary to the planning permission, clearly it's a breach of planning control, and it moves the HMO into what we call a sui generis class. It has no use class. It's a change of use if they occupy for 7. So the simple answer to that is it can only be occupied by 6, whether that's in 5 bedrooms or 6.
Another question, Chair, for me, and that is the amenity spaces, which are shown on the diagram. Could we have that on, please, where the kitchen, the amenity kitchen, or whatever space you'd like to call it? The one with the table in the kitchen.
The photo, is it?
That's it. That's one of them, and the kitchen one as well.
Yeah, that's the lounge.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple of photos there of the kitchen.
Yeah. Chair, what concerns me is the kitchen itself. You know, if we have 6 people going into the kitchen and trying to sit down to have meals, which obviously they would do because obviously they can't accommodate that in their room, I don't think that space is enough for those amenities. And exactly the same for the lounge as well. You know, in the lounge one, I can only count 5 chairs. So if you had 6 people there, somebody will have to stand somewhere to watch a television or communal area. I am concerned about that. I am also concerned of what the Councillor Davis said in regards to the parking amenities was done 8 years ago. I think that NCC needs to ensure that the parking requirements and surveys should be done within the last, at least maximum of 3 years, because of the change in travelling of individual people. And I think that we need to put that into some sort of perspective. 8 years ago, that was totally different. And also the amenities for public transport have changed over the last 8 years. So that needs to be brought up to date as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, I'll start with the most recent point first. We're not relying on the 2018 parking survey in our considerations here. I agree, it's an old survey. The survey was actually produced in response to the refusal of planning permission originally for the change of use from a dwelling to a HMO. And that appeal was subsequently allowed, and the inspector made it clear that in his view there was no adverse impact in terms of parking as a result of the change of use to a HMO. What we're saying here in parking, on the parking impact, is the occupancy levels don't change. Okay, so it can currently be occupied by 6 people, and the proposal is to be occupied by 6 people. And consequently, we don't, as officers, consider there will be any impact in parking demand. I note Councillor Davis's point that a couple may only have 1 car. We've addressed that in the report. Worst case scenario if we refer to SPG standards, even then you'd only be talking about an impact of one space. And we know from many, many past discussions on HMOs that we've had here at this planning committee and the reports of appeal decisions we've given you, when a HMO is located in a sustainable location, we don't win appeals on parking. Because there's various assumptions made by inspectors, lower car ownership, etc. But just to clarify, we are not relying on that 2018 parking survey as part of this application. In relation to the communal spaces, so paragraphs 7.8 and 7.9 of your report deal with that issue. So we've listed at paragraph 7.8 the licensing standards. And then in 7.9, we talk about the size of these spaces. And because the case officer had the benefit of seeing them developed for HMO use, in use as a HMO, they were very well kept. They were all in good order. But specifically on the size, kitchen serving up to 6 people, 10 square metres. The kitchen is 17 square metres, the living area is 14 square metres, all the bedrooms either meet or exceed 6.51 square metres, and we know this must be true because it's got a licence for 6 people. So I think that's it, Chair.
Yeah. I do have one further question, Chair, and that is a comment, not a comment, an objection which one person have put in, obviously don't say names on here, about they have quite a few HMOs in the area. So do we know where the nearest one is to this HMO, or don't we?
No, I can't say that I've checked that. All that we have checked is the 50-metre concentration radius. And we've talked about that, obviously, in the officer report, that it's a 10% concentration limit in this area, and this is, with this HMO, it's half that. But as I say, this application specifically doesn't affect the concentration. The HMO is already there, it's already counted. Adding the 6th bedroom makes no difference to the concentration assessment for the purposes of the SPG.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Reynolds, you have your hand up?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Watkins has just asked my question actually about the parking survey. I was going to raise that, the age of it, but that's just been dealt with. And the only other point I want to make really is not a question as such. It's just the fact that obviously as a planning committee we have to be mindful of the use of public money. I've raised this before, you know. I know we can't be tied by that, but it's a major consideration. Council budgets are tight, and we have to be very careful how we use money in terms of risks of appeals, etc. And looking at this application, you know, it is already an HMO, as the officer's already mentioned. So, you know, it is an existing HMO that already has permission for 6 people. So that's not changing. And in terms of the car ownership, I totally understand what Councillor Davis mentioned, but then the flip side of that is I would suggest that many couples, whether they're in HMOs or not, you quite often have a car each anyway. Many married couples, many cohabiting couples will have a car each. So there's a flip side to that as well. So when you look at the application overall, in terms of the fact that it is an HMO, it's already licensed for 6 people, officers are recommending that we accept this. I think if we were to reject this on what looked to me like quite flimsy grounds, we would be open to appeal, that we would almost certainly lose, and then we could be accused of wasting public money. So I just wanted to raise that point. But as I say, my main question has already been answered, so thank you for that, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hill's got your hand up, yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Chair. A couple of points, if I may, please. The WC on the ground floor, I presume, is just a toilet rather than a shower room. If I could get some clarification on that. It's marked on the plan as WC, so I presume that's just a toilet and a wash hand basin. The full shower room on the top floor in the attic space, I presume, is only for the benefit of the resident that uses that bedroom on the top floor. It certainly appears like that from the plan, otherwise the other residents will have to come through the bedroom in order to use that one. And the officers have then quoted the sort of HMO licensing standards several times. But what's really frustrating to me, and I have raised sort of consistencies between licensing and planning several times previously and put notices of motion in, it seems to me that, you know, licensing just grant licenses without following their own rules, because the licensing standards currently say that where a HMO has 6 occupants or more, there should be 2 combined bathrooms or 2 combined shower rooms. And this property doesn't have, if the 2 points I made at the start are correct, doesn't have 2 combined bathrooms or 2 combined shower rooms. And therefore, it isn't adequate amenity for 6 occupiers of the property. And on that basis, if I'm right in the 2 points, and I'd ask a planning officer to confirm, I can't support the application on that basis.
Thank you, Councillor. Do you have any? I think you'll respond.
Yeah, I confirm your understanding is correct, Councillor Howells. On the downstairs WC and wash hand basin, and the upstairs is an ensuite, so it's for the use of the attic bedroom. I think you're referring to the licensing standards on page 8 of the standards. I appreciate the other members won't be able to see that. Where we say 6 people, 2 combined bathrooms or 2 combined shower rooms. It technically has 2 combined bathrooms. I appreciate one is an ensuite. So the property does satisfy that standard, in my opinion, but appreciate that one has restricted access.
Okay, thanks. I think that's a liberal take on the regs, really, because, you know, only one room benefits from them. But on the point as well, in terms of the conversion of the 1 bathroom that everybody can use, because they're going to have to move the wall in order to make the storeroom sufficiently big to meet the 6.51 for the minimum standards for a bedroom. You know, what are the residents in that property going to use whilst they're converting a bathroom and moving a wall? There's going to be no bathroom facilities during the point of conversion, because that's the only bathroom that everybody can use. So to me, to expect the 5 residents that only have access to that 1 bathroom to have no access to a bath in that period of renovation is just, you know, unacceptable. And again, you know, in terms of amenity for residents, both current and future, that's just ridiculous.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rheoli.
Thank you, Chair. This is indeed a difficult application. Difficult for many reasons, as it's been to the planning inspector, and the inspector has used his decision wisely or otherwise. I agree with my colleague Councillor Howells, and it's the exact point I was going to raise myself. It is about compromise, but I guess what this application is doing is wringing the most they can get out of it, with possibly being able to get away with an exploitation of something else. I don't think we're doing ourselves any good. These are real people living in real lives in real times. One can argue, where would they go to live if it wasn't for these wonderful houses of multiple occupation? I'm not quite sure. But for us to compromise our principles here, and not to, I understand the argument about the roads being congested, not being able to find a parking space. I get that. But you have to look internally here. And the problem that we face as a planning committee, and I think that Councillor Reynolds is also right. So there we have, we got two different sides of the arguments here. You know, the balanced approach where we look after the public purse, or the other approach where we look after the health and mental well-being of the individuals that we place into these houses of multiple occupation, where we hope they're all going to get on and thrive. The political thinking is there's more of this to come down the line. There's more of this heading this way, and we're going to be facing, I guess, if they empty the hotels out, my fear is we're going to be facing a tsunami of applications in our areas that we're not going to be able to sit comfortably with. I have a dilemma here. I want to support the good advice given by the officers, but I also have to satisfy my conscience as to what I am doing at this moment in time. Does it benefit citizens of Newport? And I'm not quite sure it does, but that's not our fault. We as Mark has called for joint meetings before, and we've all supported that between health and planning, and nothing's come forward. I'm sorry for the rant, Chair. No. I really feel strongly about this.
Thank you for your input, Councillor. Councillor Horton.
Thank you, Chair. Due to what I deem to be extremely sensible comments of Councillor Howells, I'm very much minded to vote against this application, because what he said about the amenities to me makes perfect sense. I don't think it's acceptable to say that a ensuite bathroom is counted as an amenity for the other residents to use. That's like saying I'm staying in a hotel room, but I'm going to go and use the shower room next door. It doesn't carry water for me, so I'm minded to reject the application. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Howard.
I'll speak. I agree with Councillor Howells. Attic space, it was referred to as an ensuite bathroom. The other bathroom was a communal bathroom. And if this states it should be two, there should be two. And not only that, by reducing the size of that bathroom and increasing the number of occupants there, I think it's going to be very awkward, so I won't be supporting this.
And in that policy for two bathrooms, it states that the bathroom needs to be big enough that they can undress, shower and dress again in dry clothes, and they're decreasing the size of the bathroom. And the other point I want to make, in your introduction, 1.2, it says a condition was made that while the number of occupants can be up to 6, the number of bedrooms shall not exceed 5 at any one time, and that was a condition of the appeal that allowed the HMO in the first place. So I think we need to give weight to that and be minded of that too.
Yeah, that's right, Councillor Perkins. That was what they actually applied for. So the inspector limited it to 5 bedrooms, but didn't put an occupancy limit on it. Hence the reason why it can be occupied by 6 people in 5 bedrooms. As I say, that's purely what they applied for, and why we're looking at this application today for 6 bedrooms, i.e. the descriptions changing to 6 from 5.
You just said there's 6 people already living there. So if we put an extra bedroom, that'll be 7 people living there.
No, one of the rooms is a double. They can't go above 6. They won't go above 6. So it's currently occupied by 6 people. And I should say, Chair, we don't know which room is a double. Any of those rooms could be a double. Okay, so one of the room without an ensuite could be the double. We could have a single occupant in the ensuite bedroom. So just bear that in mind. There's no requirement for the attic bedroom to be occupied by 2 people. If the attic bedroom is occupied by 1 person, assumedly paying more for the privilege of having an ensuite, and the rest of the house, i.e. 5 occupants, are reliant on the shared bathroom, that will continue to be the case, albeit I note there are some minor adaptations to shave a bit off the floor space of the bathroom. But please bear that in mind. We can already have a situation where 5 of the occupants are using the shared bathroom and the downstairs WC.
Okay. Thank you. So, you seem very confused there, Councillor.
I am a bit confused. If there's already 6 people living there, why do they need an extra room?
Because one of the rooms is occupied by 2 people. So it's 5 bedrooms, 4 singles, 1 double. So 6 people in total. That is the current arrangement. And there's no requirement, like I say, for that ensuite bedroom to be the double. Whoever, assumedly, is paying the premium, single or couple, will be occupying the attic room. So it's you know, the bedroom sizes there are actually very good. They've got those nice bays on the frontage. One of those could be occupied by a couple, and the remaining 5 people already reliant on that shared bathroom and the ground floor WC. And so the situation really is the acceptability of shaving off some of the floor space of the shared bathroom. That's ultimately it, in as far as I can see it.
Okay, thank you. I'll take a final question from Councillor Reynolds. Go up to the agenda.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify something if I can. I certainly don't disagree with any of the points raised by with Councillor Howells. But I just want to clarify because there was talk about the licensing committee granting a licence going against their own principles. That may or may not be the case. But as a planning committee, I don't think we can, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think we can refuse something because we don't agree with a licensing decision. So can we just clarify whether the points raised relates to licensing or planning? Because we have to be careful. If we're going to reject this, which seems to be the feeling at the moment, we have to make sure we're on solid ground for doing that. Thank you.
You're quite right, Councillor Reynolds. License considerations are entirely separate to planning. We've been told this multiple times by the inspectors. So you have to reserve your considerations to the planning merits or otherwise of this scheme.
Right, it's just the concern I've got is that unless I've misunderstood the dimensions, most of the rooms and the amenities, admittedly they are small and it's not something that I would particularly be happy in living in, but as far as I can see they do meet the minimum requirements. So again, I'm a little bit concerned about the prospect of refusing an application when the actual legal requirements have been met. So again, I don't know whether you can sort of throw any more light on that.
Okay. Right, thank you, Councillor. We now move to those that agree with the officer's recommendation. Proposer.
Sorry, Chair, can I have a response from the officers, please, on what points I just raised?
Sorry?
Could I have a response from the officers, please, on the points I just raised before we vote?
Yeah. So I've showed you the licence that's currently in place, which I showed that on the slide as part of the presentation, which confirms 5-bedroom HMO for 6 occupants. Councillor Howells has obviously commented on the licensing standards, and we've mentioned them in our report. But rightly so, we're considering the planning merits. All the rooms, you're absolutely right, meet or exceed the licensing standards, which, notwithstanding some other discussions we've had previously about licensing and thresholds and give or take in terms of the standards, all the rooms meet or exceed the standards stated in licensing guidelines or regs. So all the rooms have been inspected. So as I said before, on this particular HMO application, we have the benefit of seeing it in use as a HMO. We've had the benefit of observing the communal spaces in use as a HMO. They're all well laid out, in good order, well lit. That access to the outdoor space, front and back, again, well laid out, provision of cycle storage, all the things we like to see are there. So our consideration is focused on the acceptability of that 6th bedroom for the future occupier of the 6th bedroom. So we specifically asked the applicant to provide us with a plan showing furniture in situ, because of course those works haven't been observed because they haven't been done yet. So we wanted to see what would be the implication of moving that partition wall, which in response to Councillor Howell's comments is a relatively minor operation. It's a partition, it's like a stud wall, not a block wall. What would be the implication? Where would you put a single bed? How would that fit? Where would you put a desk and a small table? Where would you put a little wardrobe? So they've given us those details, and I showed you that plan. And we also wanted to understand, with the reduction of the floor space in the bathroom, because we observed a bath present and a nice big wide sink, etc., how would that work? What would need to change? And the applicant has told us the bath will stay. The only thing changing is the sink will get more standard sized. But what they've also said is when they move the bath, they'll also have regard to the occupier's preferences, and if the occupiers prefer a shower, they'll install a shower instead and remove the bath. Okay, so they've told us all these things, and we've sought that additional information to confirm that these things would work in practice. So as far as we're concerned, the existing rooms, they're a given, they're consented. The new rooms are acceptable. They've got nice windows, nice outlook at the back, etc. So I'm not sure if that answers your question, Councillor Ranulph.
No, thank you, Chair.
Okay,
Thanks very much. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Wright, have you got your hand up to propose with the officer's recommendation?
Thank you, Chair. Given that this is such an important decision, not needfully, I very rarely ask this. The officers have had the chance of looking at a live HMO in action as it's working. This is an opportunity for us to have a site visit here. I really have to, before I make a decision, I want to be able to go and have a look at this as it is. So I would be asking committee to support a site visit and defer this recommendation till after that decision, after that visit has been made. So I would move that as a recommendation, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. So you're proposing a site visit. I cannot see what difference that would make myself personally, but do we have a seconder for the site visit, or? Sorry. Okay, so yes, so we have a proposer for a site visit on this HMO. Do we have a seconder? No. So that motion fails. Yes. Now we'll go back to the officer's recommendations for a proposal to accept the application. So do you have a proposal for accepting the officer's recommendation? Councillor Watkins. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Reynolds? Yes. So all those in favour of this application, raise your hands. One, two, three, four. Those against? One, two, three. Three against. Abstention? One. Okay, so the officer's recommendation is granted. Okay, thank you. Thank you, everybody. Right. Moving on to item number 2. This is page 26 to 39. The application number 260054. And it's Whitegate, Outfall Lane, St Bride's, Wentlow. And the ward member is Councillor Howells, Screen and Watkins. What have we got? The presenting officer is Joanne Davison, Newport East, and Jonathan Jones. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so the application site is Whitegate, Outfall Lane. The site is a detached dwelling with a fairly generous plot. The site is located within countryside, green wedge, special landscape area, flood zone free, and a triple SI is located to the rear of the property. The application itself is seeking consent for a construction of a detached double garage located to the front of the dwelling and an outbuilding located to the rear of the dwelling. The application has been reported to committee at the request of Councillor Screen and Councillor Howells due to concerns regarding character impact. Members may recall a previous application for a replacement dwelling at this site that was approved through committee. This permission included a condition removing permitted development rights on the site. So, as you can see, the property is situated in a row of 4 detached dwellings in a rural location just off Outfall Lane. The site is situated to the west of St Bride's, and the row of neighbouring properties is situated to the northern end of Outfall Lane. The dwelling itself is surrounded by predominantly open fields with some commercial buildings to the west. This is an existing block plan of the site showing the replacement dwelling, and then this is the proposed block plan showing the detached double garage, which will measure 5.5 metres in depth, 6 metres in width, 2 metres in height to the eaves, and 3.5 metres in height to the ridge. As well as this, it is proposed to be set off 1.2 metres from the common boundary. As well as this, you can see the garden room proposed. This is located in the rear garden and will measure 4 metres in depth, 12 metres in width, 2.2 metres in height, and a maximum height of 2.5 metres. As well as this, it is also proposed to be set off 1.7 metres. This was a landscape plan submitted by the applicant that shows to the front of the property a 1.8 metre high hedgerow, just down here, and also a wildflower patch measuring 75 square metres before. On both side elevations of the property, a 1.8 metre high native hedgerow and various different trees are also proposed. So this is a picture of the proposed outbuilding. As you can see, it will externally adopt a monopitch roof and will be constructed of a cream render with stone cladding at its base. As well as this, the roof is proposed to be constructed of a single ply membrane and will match the existing dwelling. Along with the garage here, this will adopt a gable roof design and will be constructed again of this cream render with the stone cladding at the base. The roof will be constructed of a dark grey concrete tiles and again will match the existing dwelling. So these are some pictures of the site. As you can see, the reconstruction of the house is currently still under construction, and as such a caravan is situated in the same sort of position where the garage will be positioned. So this is from the neighbouring property Willowbrook, and as you move down Outfall Lane, you can see the property here. This is inside the property, and as you can see, the caravan is where the proposed garage will be situated. Moving to the rear of the garden, these pictures show where the outbuilding will be positioned. And as you can see, this is where the outbuilding will be positioned in relation to the dwelling and also the rest of the rear garden. And this picture shows the current boundary treatment and where the proposed outbuilding will be located. And you can also start to see the neighbouring properties' outbuildings. This is a picture of the neighbouring property to the south, Greenfields, and for a bit of street character, this is proposed right next to the property here, the application site, and also Outfall Lane here. And this bit of the dwelling here is of similar size, similar materials, scale, and design as the proposed garage. And that was just for a bit of context. And as well as this, this is also a photo provided by the applicant in their cover letter. This image shows the neighbouring property Willowbrook, and as you can see, the property already holds 4 outbuildings up against the common boundary with the property. So the proposed outbuilding is to be up against this fence, and as you can see, up against the 4 outbuildings the neighbouring property has. As well as this, this is an aerial photo of the neighbouring property to the south, Greenfields. And you can see that this property also has quite a substantial detached garage already. In terms of the application, in visual amenity terms, members should note that the proposed outbuilding is located to the rear of the garden, so it won't be readily visible from the public realm, meaning any visual impact would be limited. In saying this, its scale and height is modest, the use of materials match the existing dwelling, and due to the neighbouring properties adopting similar forms of outbuildings in their rear garden, the development reflects the established pattern of development in the neighbouring rear garden and avoids an outbuilding that has any unacceptable visual impacts. With regard to the garage, it would be visible within the public realm, but we are satisfied that the scale, sitting and design are appropriate. The garage adopts a gable form and materials that match the main dwelling, and like I've just said, a comparable garage exists at the neighbouring property, and as such, the proposal would not seem out of character of the area or harm the openness and special character of the countryside or special landscape area. As well as this, a condition was also attached to the decision that required the materials used to be in compliance with the approved plans, so to ensure that they match the existing dwelling. In terms of residential amenity, due to the position, scale and sitting of both the garage and the outbuilding, as well as the proposed hedgerow, it is considered that the proposed element would be acceptable, avoiding any unacceptable impact in respect of outlook, overbearing or overlooking. Due to the site being located within a flood zone, there was concerns about flooding, but as the development is limited scale, the proposal is acceptable and there were no objections from National Resource Wales on flood risk grounds. In terms of surface runoff, the proposed development is of small scale and would result in sufficient undeveloped space within the plot that can accommodate surface water runoff. There is no reason or evidence to suggest that surface water runoff would result in any sort of issues. Furthermore, no concerns have been raised by any statutory consultancies that dealt with surface water runoff or flooding on the application. Due to the site's location within the Gwent Levels SSI, consideration is given to the impact of the development upon the specific features of the SSI. In this case, as the proposed development is minor in scale and incidental to the existing residential use of the plot, no concern or objection is raised. Nor has there been any policy conflict that has been identified that would preclude the development progressing to a positive determination on this basis. The application itself received comments from the Wentlood Community Council and 2 neighbouring properties, all objecting to the proposal. These comments have been given due consideration throughout the whole process. Members will note that the Wentlood Community Council referred to the historic condition restricting permitted developments on the site. That condition was imposed specifically to prevent uncontrolled or instrumental development. It does not preclude development on the site, subject to planning consent being obtained. Importantly, this means that the condition did not prohibit development outright. It simply requires that the proposals are assessed through the planning process. The Community Council also made reference that an appeal of an objection to remove the condition restricting PD at this site is still undetermined. However, on the 13th of January 2026, this appeal was dismissed by the inspector. They stated in their report that the condition does not prohibit future development. Rather, it ensures that any proposals are subject to planning control and assessed against relevant planning policies. In saying this, both the Community Council and neighbouring properties objected due to the development not being policy compliant with specific policies SP7, SP8, H12 and GP5. As noted in the officer report, policies SP7 and H12 were deemed not to be directly applicable to the proposal as they sought to control increases in building volume for new dwellings and extensions, which this application does not seek consent for. Notwithstanding the above, due regard has been given to the site's sensitive location and the proposal has been carefully assessed in terms of its impact on local character. In relation to policies SP8 and GP5, full consideration has been given to these policies during the assessment of the application, and for reasons outlined above and elsewhere, the proposed development is not considered to result in any unacceptable impact on character of the site. The Community Council and neighbouring neighbours also objected due to concerns of overdevelopment on the site. However, as mentioned, the site is generous in size and the proposed development is limited in scale. As a result, it is considered that the development is not out of character with the pattern of development in the area, and there is deemed to be no overdevelopment of the land. Members are also advised that concerns have been raised regarding potential conflict with the approved landscaping scheme that was proposed and potential impact on the boundary hedge. In response to this, the revised landscaping plan was assessed by the Council's landscape officer, and they raised no objections to the distance between either the garage or the outbuilding in relation to the hedgerow. As a result, the officers were satisfied with the sitting of both of the garage and garden room, and that it allows sufficient separation to avoid any conflict with the approved planting proposals. The Community Council also requested that landscaping to be implemented prior to any further development on the site. Members should note that a condition is recommended, which will require the approved planting scheme to be implemented before the first beneficial use of the proposed garage and outbuilding. As well as this, neighbouring comments also raised concerns about surface water runoff. While the neighbour makes reference to the previous application for a replacement dwelling, they stated concerns surrounding the additional development leading to increased surface water runoff. However, as mentioned earlier, the proposal is of limited scale, and both National Resource Wales and Welsh Water raised no objections in relation to surface water runoff, and there is no evidence to suggest that development will have any unacceptable adverse impact upon flooding or surface water drainage within the immediate area and is therefore deemed acceptable. As a result, this application is recommended to be granted with conditions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ben. We have one speaker, and that is Mr. Howells.
Good morning. I'd like to highlight a few points to support the Planning Officer's recommendation for approval. This application is fully compliant with the relevant planning policies. As stated in the Planning Officer's report, by using the same materials for the garage and garden room as used on the existing dwelling, this will result in the proposal being visually coherent with the existing dwelling and will not result in an unacceptable impact on the visual amenities of the area. There have been no objections raised from the landscape consultant whose role is to safeguard the character of the area, nor from NRW and Welsh Water, the Council's principal environmental bodies. The landscape consultant recommended additional planting to soften the visual impact and further satisfy policy GP5. These recommendations have been incorporated into the proposal. As mentioned in the officer's report and as shown within our covering letter, one neighbouring property has a garage of comparable scale. However, this is in fact a triple garage with a significant larger footprint and greater ridge height than the garage we have proposed. The similar property also includes a separate single garage and multiple outbuildings across their plot. On the opposite side, the neighbouring property has outbuildings running along the common boundary where the proposed garage room would be, where the proposed garden room would be located. In this neighbouring property has around 8 additional structures of various sizes and heights, including a garage, including a workshop and garden room with around a 3-metre ridge height, again greater than the proposed garden room. These examples clearly demonstrate that the proposal is consistent with the established character of the immediate area. Furthermore, along the stretch of the coastal road B4239, the vast majority of properties include garages and outbuildings or both within their curtilage, reinforcing the proposal is typical and appropriate in the context of the character of the area. There seems to be some misunderstanding regarding the removal of permit development rights. The removal of these rights does not prevent any future changes. Rather, it requires that any future works which would ordinarily fall under these rights are subjected to a full planning application. This allows the Council to assess proposals against the local development planning policies. This application has followed this process in full. Throughout the entire process, including the previous application, we have consistently followed the correct planning procedures, policies and guidance in good faith. Despite this, another application has been brought back before the committee. In our view, the objections raised by the Councillor for committee consideration are largely influenced by their views on our previous application. However, our previous application has already been legally approved and accepted by the planning system, as well as the unanimous support from committee members, and any future proposal should be assessed on its own merit. To summarise, the application has been rigorously assessed and deemed acceptable and appropriate for the plot. There are no objections from landscape consultant, environmental bodies and highways or any other professional consultees. Prior to Councillor's screen request for referral, there was no objections from any statutory consultants. The proposed materials and finish match the approved dwelling and are in keeping with the character of the area. As shown in our covering letter, the previous history of the site had similar structures, including a previous single garage and multiple substantial masonry outbuildings. And when you take into consideration the neighbouring dwellings, it is clear that the proposal aligns with both the immediate and wider character of the area. The application does not conflict with any planning policies or the previously approved schemes, including the landscape scheme. For the above reasons, we respectfully request that the committee follow in line with the Planning Officer's recommendation for approval. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Mr. Hales. Open to the members. Yeah. I can see, looking at the plans and this application, I can't see it being any different than the other neighbouring properties that they've got a number of sheds and units within their boundary, and the aesthetics of this are a lot better than I can see on the neighbouring properties. So that's my thoughts on this. Councillor Watkins, do you want to?
Chair, I notice the Councillor's screen is in thing. Has he applied to speak on this? He hasn't, okay, because he asked it to come to committee. That's what made me ask that. Okay. I do have one question, Chair, and that is on the bottom of page 32. Prematurely appeal on permitted development rights, removal still undetermined. The applicant has appealed the refusal of 25/0276, removal of permitted development rights until appeal is determined. The permanent development restriction remains in force. It would be inappropriate to approve substantial new buildings while the inspector is considering whether unrestricted development would harm the green wedge and neighbouring amenities. I'd like the officer's thoughts on that, please.
Yeah, thank you. So, so that went to appeal. It was an application to vary the condition of the original application that was approved. This went to appeal and it was dismissed. So the condition is a standard condition that is attached to any replacement dwelling in the countryside, and it just allows the council to have greater control over what is actually allowed.
So that objection by the council is still standing if the appeal was dismissed. And what you're doing now, you're bringing it back to committee with the planning application of the double garage as well.
Yes, that's correct. So the replacement dwelling was granted subject to a condition removing permitted development rights for outbuildings within the curtilage. There was an appeal lodged by the applicants to remove that condition. However, that was dismissed. So the condition remains. And the purpose of this application is to obtain consent for the garage and outbuilding. So the fact that there is a condition there stating that, removing those permitted development rights does not preclude future development. It just means that consent is required.
So have I got this clear, that if we approve the application, those permitted development rights appear to have been squashed then, basically? They can then continue to do that development.
So what would be, if consent was granted, it would be for the outbuilding and the garage as proposed. Any future development on site would also require its own consent.
Okay. Right. The other question, Chair, is the fact that the mobile home caravan, which is actually situated on site, can we ensure on a condition that that is actually removed once the property is developed?
So the caravan is afforded permitted development rights whilst the replacement dwelling is being constructed. When that is completed, those rights would be removed, and the caravan would need to be removed from site also. What I would say is, additionally, though, the garage would be positioned where the caravan is to be located. So, it wouldn't be able to remain in that location, but those permitted development rights for the siting of that caravan are temporary only while the construction of the dwelling is being undertaken.
So, just to be clear, that once the building, the property or the building, the home is being completed, the caravan or mobile home will be removed and then the garage built.
Yes, that's correct. So in my view, there is no need to attach a condition for the removal of the caravan because that will need to be done in any case.
But I'm concerned that they would move the caravan elsewhere in the curtilage of the property. That's why I'm concerned. That's why I want it removed off-site.
That would, because of the restrictions for the siting of outbuildings, that would fall foul of the permitted development rights condition that has been attached already. So I don't know that that would add anything that we don't already have. We already have those controls. So I don't see that there's any requirement for that to be attached because we already have those controls. So the siting of the caravan, like you said, is a temporary permitted development rights whilst the replacement dwelling is being built. Once that is habitable, then that would need to be removed. And we've already attached a condition to the original consent for the replacement dwelling to restrict the siting or erection of outbuildings, which is why we're having why we're considering the current application for the rear outbuilding. So we already have those controls available to us through the original consent for the replacement dwelling.
I agree with you, Chair. I can't see any reason why they should be. I'd be happy to grant you with conditions.
No, it's all right. I thought there was a speaker on screen.
No, I didn't see anybody. That's why. No, I didn't see any hands up, so that's why I went with Councillor Hardy's.
Chair, sorry, Chair, I did have my hand up, but I took it back down again because it was only to agree with what you'd said, and then Councillor Watkins asked a similar question anyway. So I would like to second the motion that was raised a few minutes ago, if that's possible, please.
So your proposer, seconder, right? All those in favour? Officer's recommendation to grant. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Those against? Councillor Watkins. Okay, so that is granted. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, everybody, for that. Okay. Item number 3. This is page 40 to 47. Yes, yeah, right. This is where I'm declaring an interest, so I'll hand over to Councillor Harvey. Take the chair. I'll move out.
The application is 26-0160 and it's for proposed first floor side extension and retention of a driveway. And it is, we got a speaker, Ben Webster.
Thank you, Chair. So the application site is a two-storey detached dwelling located on Farnaby Close, which is a cul-de-sac in the Ringland ward. The property is finished in brick and render with a tiled roof and currently benefits from a flat roof linked detached garage which connects to the western side elevation. So there are two elements to this development. The first is seeking retrospective planning permission for the creation of a parking plateau and driveway to the front of the property, and the second element is seeking planning permission for the erection of a first floor side extension. The application is presented to committee as requested by Councillor Stowell-Courtland following an objection received by the occupant of 154 Ringland Circle. The concerns relate to a loss of light, loss of privacy and the potential overshadowing of the rear garden. For context, number 154 Ringland Circle is located to the rear of 12 Farnaby Close and is downslope of the development site. So I'll begin with the driveway. So, as previously mentioned, the application is in part retrospective and the driveway has been constructed. Before the driveway was created, the front garden was a sloped grass area with a low red brick wall across the front boundary and a single width vehicular access providing one off-road parking space. The front garden has since undergone engineering works to create a plateau measuring between 150 and 860 millimetres above ground level, 5.1 metres in depth and 7.15 metres in width. The plateau has increased the parking provision at the property by 2 off-road spaces. And to accommodate the change, a 6.2 metre section of the front boundary wall has been removed and a new pier has been erected. A 1.85 metre section of the front boundary wall remains in situ. The driveway is surfaced with tarmac with block pavers along the edge and an ACO channel drain along the northern edge providing drainage. Yeah, so some pictures there for reference. So in terms of impact on visual amenity, we are satisfied that a formalised plateau arrangement in this location would not appear visually intrusive or overly dominant within the streetscape. In this case, the level change is not so significant compared to the existing, so as to result in the need for extensive retaining walls or similar features to add visual impact. There are a number of other off-road parking areas to property frontages along the street, providing a visible presence of cars perpendicular to the highway, so cars parked on the development will not appear incongruous in this context. Although the removal of the front wall and grassed area is not desirable, the harm is limited in this instance, and the driveway is considered acceptable. So the Council Highways Officer was consulted and is not supportive of the proposal due to the width of the footway crossing and insufficient detail relating to visibility displays, but they are not objecting to the development. The Highways Officer is correct in noting that we do not have access to adequate visibility displays, although given the height of the walls and the limited volume of traffic along Farnaby Close, it is considered that the driveway in its current form does not present a safety issue. Regarding the footway crossing, the applicant is advised that in order for the driveway to be used lawfully, the access would require the provision of an authorised drop curb. However, this is independent of planning, and the applicant must contact the Council Highways Authority, but they are likely waiting the outcome of this application before doing so. So the driveway has removed some green infrastructure from the site, which formerly would have acted as drainage for the front garden, but nevertheless, sufficient detail has been provided related to drainage, and it is confirmed that an ACO channel drain has been installed, and this connects to the existing channel on the existing hard surfacing. It is worth noting that no concerns or objections have been received from any neighbouring occupiers in relation to the driveway. So, moving on to the second proposed extension, a first floor side extension is proposed above the existing footprint of the existing garage, measuring 3.5 metres in width and 6.9 metres in depth. A hipped roof is proposed for a depth of 3.4 metres, and this would be visible from Farnaby Close, and a flat roof is proposed for the remaining depth of 3.5 metres. The extension would measure up to a maximum height of 6.2 metres to the ridge of the hip roof and 5.2 metres to the top of the flat roof. The extension would be set back 1 metre from the front elevation of the dwelling and 1.1 metre from the rear elevation. All external elevations would be finished in fibre cement cladding in a colour to match the brickwork, and the roof would be brown concrete tiles with white UPVC windows to match the existing. Fenestration consists of 1 triple window on the front elevation and 1 triple pane window on the rear elevation. No windows are proposed in the side elevation. In terms of impact on visual amenity, we are satisfied that the proposed extension would be a subordinate addition to the property and would be in keeping with the scale and form of the host dwelling. There is no uniformity in the built form, and the pattern of development is irregular along Farnaby Close due to the diverse mix of architectural styles. As such, there is no rhythm of solids or voids, and although the extension would introduce built form at first level, owing to the context of Farnaby Close, it is considered that it would not harm the streetscape in this instance. So, as mentioned previously, the application is being presented to committee as called by Councillor Stowell-Corton in response to concerns raised by the resident of 154 Ringland Circle. Due to the topography of Farnaby Close, the land slopes from Farnaby Close to Ringland Circle at the rear, meaning that number 154 Ringland Circle is set at a lower ground level than number 12 Farnaby Close. The proposed extension would be 36.2 metres from the rear elevation of number 154 and 18.5 metres from the shared rear boundary. The concerns raised relate to a loss of light, a loss of privacy and the potential overshadowing of the rear garden. It is unclear why the complainant considers that the works described would do so over and above the existing footprint of the main dwelling. Regarding the shadowing of the rear garden, a shadow analysis demonstrates that the existing dwelling does not cause shade into the rear garden, nor the rear elevation of 154 Ringland Circle, and any existing shadowing is caused by numbers 10 and 14 Farnaby Close. Given this, there is no reason to consider that the proposed first floor extension would cause shadowing, especially given the set down and set back and the distance between the proposal and the objector's property. In terms of privacy, the development proposes a first floor window on the rear elevation. However, this would be set back 1 metre from the rear elevation of the existing dwelling. The neighbour concerns relate to privacy. However, any view toward the rear elevation or the rear garden can already be achieved through the existing first floor windows on the rear elevation, which actually project closer to the dwelling than the proposed window. Given this, it is considered that the existing windows would not result in a loss of privacy over and above the existing situation. The concerns also refer to the Right of Light Act 1959. However, this is a civil matter and not a planning consideration. But in any event, we can be reasonably satisfied that the development would not have an unacceptable or harmful impact on the daylight reaching the neighbouring amenity for the reasons assessed above. There is a single pane window on the side elevation of number 14 Farnaby Close, which serves a landing. This is visible in this picture. The SPG specifies that only habitable rooms are relevant to daylight considerations, but the 25-degree test as specified in the SPG was undertaken. The proposed extension failed the 25-degree test against the proposed elevations, but the test also marginally failed against the existing dwelling. This demonstrates that the proposed extension would diffuse some natural light over the existing situation. However, the impact would not be significantly worse, and in any event, the window is not protective, nor does it serve a habitable room, so the impact to neighbouring amenity is limited in this regard. So, to conclude, the Council is satisfied that the development does not harm the visual amenity of Farnaby Close, nor the residential amenity of neighbouring occupiers. The extension would not reduce the level of natural light entering any neighbouring habitable rooms, nor would it cause any overshadowing of neighbouring amenity. No objections have been received from either of the immediate neighbouring occupiers along Farnaby Close, and the development is in accordance with the relevant locally adopted policies, and it is recommended that the application is granted with conditions. Thank you.
Any questions? With the officer's recommendation, do we have a proposer? Seconder? Those for? Oh yeah, I forget when I start this. Any against? Any abstentions? Propose as granted with conditions.
On now to item number 4, page 48. Application number 25/1071. It's in the ward Tredegar Park and Marshfield. The site, land adjacent to electric substation Celtic Way, Celtic Lights, and the proposal is for an installation of an underground cable connection from 132 kilovolt substation to a data centre. The presenting officer on this occasion is Grant Hawkins, and we have no speakers. Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This application seeks planning permission for the installation of an underground cable connection from a substation to a data centre at Celtic Way. The application is brought to Planning Committee as major development due to the site area being greater than 1 hectare. The applicant has undertaken the statutory pre-application inquiry consultation process prior to formal submission. The LPA has undertaken a full public consultation through neighbour notification, site and press notices, resulting in no responses. An EIA screening has been undertaken which concluded the development is not EIA development. The recommendation is a resolution to grant with conditions subject to the signing of a legal agreement. The application site is located south of the industrial park at Celtic Way, an area that members are likely to be familiar with owing to the various planning applications for development projects that have been presented to committee over the last few years. The red line of the site is based on the proposed cabling route, which will reinforce the power supply from a new substation, highlighted in yellow to the bottom right of the screen, to the under construction Microsoft data centre substation, highlighted in purple, more centrally within the screen. The new substation is currently being considered under delegated powers via a separate planning application, and permission is due to be granted shortly, with the final matters in the process being resolved by the case officer. The application site is located partly within the urban boundary and partly within the countryside. To the north and west of the red line, there is an area of land allocated for employment use within the local development plan. This area, fairly central here. The site is within the Gwent Level Special Landscape Area. It is an archaeologically sensitive area, a landscape of outstanding historic interest, the Cardiff and Newport Green Wedge, and flood zone 2 and 3 Rivers and Sea defended. The southern part of the site is located within the Gwent Levels SSI. The SSI is notified for its range of aquatic plants and invertebrates associated with the interconnected reens and ditches of the drainage system. In summary, the special interests of the SSI are dependent on the water quality, water quantity, the existence of the drainage system and its continued management. Any development which has an adverse impact on any of these factors will have an adverse impact on the wildlife for which the area is notified. For most of the cable route, the cabling will be installed via a trench, needing a 6 to 10 metre wide working area. Cables will be laid, covered, and the trench backfilled with existing material and the ground made good. Working backwards from the data centre, the open trench route is contained within the data centre site, leads onto a small section of highway at the Church Lane roundabout, before routing down a closed highway at Celtic Way, known as the Road to Nature. As the route travels along the Road to Nature, it enters the SSI, and the route turns east at the roundabout towards the new substation. So just to confirm, on the top left image there, the end location, the substation within the Microsoft site, is roughly where my cursor is. So the route will travel within the Microsoft site to the roundabout at Church Lane, and then it will run down the Road to Nature, adjacent to the Road to Nature, all the way down to this unused roundabout, where it will start to head east, and it will cross in a sort of a southeasterly direction, this wider marked area, to the new substation being considered under a separate application, roughly where my cursor is, in front of the existing substation utilities there on the screen. So where the cable route is located within the SSI and encounters watercourse, a horizontal directional drilling technique, referred to as HDD, will be utilised in order for the cables to pass beneath the ground and avoid disturbance to the two small watercourses associated with the SSI and their connected habitats. This is located at the southern section of the site near the main substation, where you see the red line area widens on the plan, as it will require a width of approximately 28 metres. This technique is less evasive than the open trenching for the remainder of the site and is considered more appropriate to an environmentally sensitive location. So if we look at the principle of development, Newport is identified in future Wales as a national growth area with a strategic role in long-term sustainable economic growth and inward investment. The proposal provides essential electricity infrastructure to support the approved Microsoft data centre, an urban, previously developed site within the designated growth corridor, and directly underpins the regeneration objectives. Although part of the route lies outside of the urban boundary and is within the Gwent Levels SSI, which there is a presumption against development that would adversely affect their notified features, as set out in Planning Policy Wales Edition 12, the infrastructure is necessary. It will be installed underground and land will be fully reinstated, safeguarding landscape character and biodiversity interests. Subject to the agreed avoidance, mitigation and enhancement measures, which will be discussed in due course, no harm to the SSI is identified. Officers consider that the principle of development is considered acceptable in this instance. So, this plan here, just to show you the pink dots, are the SSI. So as the site comes down the road to nature, it enters the SSI and moves across to the end substation. During the consultation process with the relevant internal and external technical advisors, there have been no issues raised in relation to highway safety, environmental health, including residential amenity and contamination, heritage, archaeology, public rights of way and flood risk. The officer's report has considered these issues in great detail, and it is not necessary to further focus on these as part of this presentation. However, I'd be happy to answer any questions at the end if there are any specific points of interest. Instead, the main considerations that I will focus on are the environmental effects. As previously outlined, the area in which the application site is located has a number of environmental designations, with the main designation being the Gwent Levels SSI, which the proposed cable route will enter. To facilitate open trench excavation, vegetation will need to be cleared along the western verge of the highway at the road to nature, which is shown at the screen. So if you can see this sort of light purple element, this is the western edge of that unused closed highway that will facilitate some vegetation removal in order to make way for the open trenching and the working area. To facilitate the trench, vegetation will also require removal at the entrance and exit points of the horizontal directional drilling. Altogether, the ecological impact assessment advises that up to 0.4 hectares of vegetation is to be removed in order to facilitate the proposal. Throughout the application process, ongoing discussions have taken place with the Council's ecologist and Natural Resources Wales. In response to their initial consultation comments, the applicant has submitted additional ecological information that has been further considered. A key consideration in determining the application is whether the development complies with the stepwise approach as set out in Chapter 6 of Planning Policy Wales, and whether it can deliver a net gain for biodiversity. The majority of the proposed route utilises existing areas of hard-standing and previously disturbed land. This approach minimises environmental impact and aligns with the first stages of the stepwise approach. However, as mentioned, some vegetation clearance is unavoidable. These areas have potential to support dormice, a European protected species that is legally protected under the Conservation of Habitats and Species Regulations 2017 and is known to be present locally. Any vegetation clearance would therefore also require a licence from NRW. Both NRW and the Council's ecologist have provided detailed advice on the appropriate methods and timings for carrying out these works. All parties are satisfied that, subject to a dormouse conservation strategy being included within a landscape and ecological management plan and secured through the planning conditional regime, the protected species would be appropriately safeguarded. The local planning authority has undertaken the required European protected species derogation tests as set out in full within the officer's report and is satisfied that a licence from NRW would likely be granted, fulfilling its statutory duties in this respect. It is proposed that all vegetation removed will be reinstated, restored and, where practicable, enhanced. This on-site planting is considered acceptable mitigation and compensation under the stepwise approach, subject to the proposed management plan condition as confirmed by the Council's ecologist. While mitigation and compensation has been addressed on-site, the stepwise approach also requires measurable enhancement. Due to the site's physical constraints and the location, proportionate enhancement cannot be reasonably delivered within the red line boundary, which would be the preferred option. As a result, it is proposed that biodiversity enhancement will be delivered off-site, but in a location that remains closely associated and connected with the development. An indicative off-site enhancement plan has been submitted and is shown on the screen. This includes the creation of new hazel scrub edge habitat, the reinstatement, restoration and enhancement of existing scrub, woodland restoration and the provision of dormouse boxes. Given that these measures are to be delivered off-site, they cannot be secured by condition alone and would instead be secured via a legal agreement, which is the appropriate mechanism in this case to secure the works. A draft copy of this agreement has been submitted by the applicant and is acceptable, subject to final review with the Planning Contributions Manager and the Council's legal officer. The indicative proposals are considered to be acceptable in principle. Final details will need to be agreed in consultation with the Council's ecologist and secured as part of that legal agreement process. On this basis, it is concluded that the proposals accord with the stepwise approach and will successfully deliver biodiversity net gain for the development. In addition to this, and in response to NRW's request, a construction environment management plan will also be required by condition to ensure that works within the SSSI are fully detailed, appropriately controlled and carried out in accordance with best practice. The compliance with the mitigation measures identified in submitted ecological surveys is also secured through the conditional regime. Turning to the potential visual impact, the site, despite its industrial backdrop, is visually sensitive, being located within the Gwent Level Special Landscape Area, landscape of outstanding historic interest, and the Newport and Cardiff Green Wedge, which all offer policy protection. The works are for underground cabling with the restoration of the land upon completion, as already discussed within this presentation. Whilst the above designations are relevant to consideration, the proposal would not prejudice the open nature of the land or have any design implications on the landscape by means of its nature. The Council's landscape officer has offered no objection, but notes the removal of the vegetation to facilitate the HDD at the more sensitive southern section of the site. The proposed landscape and ecological management plan will include details of mitigation planting, restoration and enhancement, and the landscape officer is satisfied that this is acceptable to contribute to a scheme of soft landscaping for the development as required by Policy GB5. So overall, in conclusion, as outlined in full within the officer's report and summarised within the presentation today, it is considered that the proposal complies with the relevant local and national planning policy and is considered to be acceptable, subject to the signing of the legal agreement. It is therefore recommended that planning permission is granted with conditions subject to the signing of the legal agreement with delegated powers and discretion to refuse in the event that the legal agreement is not signed within 4 months of today's resolution to grant planning permission. Thank you very much for your time. I'd welcome any questions.
Thank you, Grant. Can you open up the members? Any questions? Councillors.
Could I see the planned route of the excavation, please?
We've got a few to choose from, so I'll start with this one.
No, not that one. The
no.
One prior to that? That one there.
This one?
No, the one with the red line on.
This one?
Yeah, that's the one.
Sorry, there's a few red lines.
Yeah, a few red. Have there been an explanation of why it's going west, then northwest, and then east? Why not just go north, straight up, to the entrance to the substation on the development? Is there an explanation for that, or we don't know? It seems to be going around the houses.
I believe there is a couple of explanations for that. Firstly, I think potentially it could be to do with sort of land ownership and control, because the applicant is SSE. Secondly, I believe it is, or potential impact is that, as I mentioned earlier on, all of this land in here is allocated within the local development plan for future development, for employment site. So there may be an implication as to putting services in that location may impact on the future buildability of that, and what we wouldn't want to do is sterilise or jeopardise anything in the future as well. So I believe those, they may not be the only factors, but those are two factors that I'm sort of aware of.
Okay, thank you, Chair. The other thing is, I can't see any consultation with regards to the environmental group that operate in that area, because what concerns me, Chair, is Newport City Council and the environment group financed the removal of the fly tipping that was down on that area, and not necessarily, hopefully it won't come back, but the environmental group has worked hard to keep this under control, and I don't see any consultation within that group. And if it has been consulted, then is there going to be any support from the developer in regards to supporting that environmental group to reinstate basically the hedgerows and everything else?
Would that be Wildlife in Newport Group? Okay. We've consulted Wildlife in Newport Group, and they haven't responded. I'm not sure whether there's any other groups that we would sort of consult, but we've done quite an extensive consultation process, and we haven't had any responses from any other members of the public or any other public groups that may have an interest in the land. With regards to the restoration, as I mentioned in the presentation, everything within the red line that is to be removed to facilitate the development is going to be restored and enhanced. We've got a landscape and ecological management plan condition that they need to submit prior to any works, any clearance works at all starting on site, and that will outline exactly what they're going to do, how they're going to mitigate it, compensate it, enhance it, for example. When we were we've obviously been in extensive discussions with our ecologist and Natural Resources Wales, who obviously have environmental interests in the area, and our ecologist did say that when looking at the submission of the KEMP, the applicant would be encouraged to engage with local environmental groups. So that's something we can feed back, certainly. We can ask them to sort of engage with any local groups that may have an interest. Yeah, so with, regards to sort of security measures, this forms part the Celtic Way and the Church Lane, I think it is, roundabout there. All that highway network forms part of the highway network. So any works to secure that on site would fall under the necessary highway controls, as it were, because it works on the highway. There's a gate, there's a barrier currently across there. I could tell it from my site visit. That looks, so that's probably the extent of the any preventative sort of barrier on site at present. This development wouldn't sort of be require any further sort of barriers or anything like that. That would be down to sort of the Highways Authority if they feel that's satisfactory or not. In terms of the consultation, we've consulted all properties within 100 metres, put the site notice and undertaken the press notice as we're required to. We haven't had any responses, but all of the works, again, all the works undertaken to the highway have to be undertaken. I want to say it's a section 55, but it's a highway, it's part of the Highways Act, so it's separate from planning. And if they require any notification for road users, etc., then they'll need to do that in that process rather than the planning application.
One further question, Chair. I know it's... Does the new substation, which is being developed at the moment, depend on this route going into the development? So what I'm saying is, if we grant this application, yet the new substation is refused because it hasn't been decided yet, where do we stand?
Sorry. Well, they're both separate. Obviously they're linked, but they're separate applications. I mean, from my perspective, if, for example, planning application was for some reason refused for the substation, which, having spoke with the officers in my team, we're working on towards just bottom out final details with regards to, it's actually similar to this, the legal agreement for the replacement planting. Subject to that being resolved, that will be granted. We've got no reason to believe that wouldn't be granted. Notwithstanding that, if for some reason that was refused but we granted the cabling, then I can't imagine they would be looking to install cabling because they'd be cables to no power source. So they are linked, and they're the same applicant for both. So yeah, I think that's probably all I've got to say on that one.
I don't see any more hands up. Okay, so if there's no more questions, we move to all those in favour of... Oh, sorry, we don't... Do we have them? Yeah. Sorry, getting mixed up there. Can we have a proposal to remove, to accept the officer's recommendations? Councillor Hopkins, seconder. Councillor Harvey? Right, thank you. That's granted. Oh, yeah. Sorry, I'm asleep. All those in favour? Yeah, I guess unanimous. This is item number 5, page 69 to 85. Application number EO8/0352, Cynllunio Road. The site is Ash Tree Cottage, Brickyard Lane. And the presenting officer is Neil Gunter. And we have one public speaker supporting this application, Mr. Andrews. Okay, Neil.
Thank you, Chair. The site in question basically lies between the M4 and the Monmouthshire and Brecon Canal, as highlighted there. Essentially, you are looking at the canal as a conservation area that's running through. Sorry, I'm having problems. There we go. That's the aerial photograph of the site prior to works commencing here. Covers roughly that area. Ash Tree Cottage is located there, and there was a former site which is now included within the ownership here. A notice was previously served on the premises, and I apologise for the overlay, it's a bit faint, but you can see the red line there, essentially running along parallel to the M4, then following the northern edge of a watercourse running through, and then basically coming towards Ash Tree Cottage. The blue line, which is hard to see on this, don't know why that keeps changing there. The blue line along here was the area of garden which the notice demarcated. Essentially, this was the list of the requirements of the notice. Cease the mixed use of the land, including tipping, excavation and deposition of soil on the land, and clear and restore the land to its former condition. We're looking at getting the area reseeded and reinstating the original access point on this area. Now, part of the problem here is it's been creeping domesticity, and requirement E is essentially to put in a wire fence not exceeding 1.3 metres in height, was to prevent that creeping domesticity into the surrounding field. Now, again, that you can see there the blue line is a little bit clearer. Sorry? Oh, right. Sorry. The blue line here, that is to demarcate the curtilage or the garden area of Ash Tree Cottage. The notice wasn't complied with, but we move on to the current round of issues here. As you can see, it's extended outwards, basically going east, and you've got trackways and terracing going into the field area, and the slope's been reprofiled to facilitate this. There are two unauthorised structures. One appears as though it's to be a dwelling, although it isn't occupied as such at the moment, and the westernmost one seemed to be storage for tools, etc., a bit akin to a shed. Now, one of the issues here is the noise levels, and as you can see that it's above 75 decibels in this area. It doesn't really show it very clearly, but both those buildings fall within this area. Although ostensibly they're not dwellings at the moment, the stated use was potentially to be Airbnb or accommodation for family. The TAN, the technical advice note, basically precludes development when it exceeds 72 decibels. As you could see in that previous slide, we were actually into 75 decibels, so the level's actually unacceptable from that point of view. What we're proposing is that the site, it's in the open countryside, and the development doesn't require a countryside location to exist. As such, it's unacceptable in this location. The impact, obviously, is visibility from the M4, particularly from the westbound carriageway, and from within the site, or should I say, the side of the towpath. There's two access points that have been opened up, which facilitate wide views of the interior of the site. Basically, it's incongruous in this location. So what we're proposing is that essentially there's two options. One is to serve an additional notice The second is, or alternative option, is to go for an injunction. The reason for going down the injunctive route is we've served a notice previously and that has proved to be unsuccessful. Excuse me. Also, the courts, although it isn't a requirement of the Act, the courts do like to see that we've exhausted or tried alternative enforcement means, which we have done here. The other aspect, which probably supports the injunctive approach, is some of the development here has actually spread beyond the site's boundaries to onto the authorities' land, which essentially is the towpath and stretches of hedge that have been removed, and potentially the undermining of the towpath. And also we've had reports from the highways team for the Welsh Government saying that there's been encroachment onto their land. Now, a notice, excuse me, a notice couldn't address those issues, as they'd be best dealt with by the landowner, but a more holistic approach, given that the breach is central to Ash Tree Cottage, is proposed here. In terms of the requirements of an order or stroke enforcement notice, we're saying cease the use of the land as garden, parking of vehicles, storage in the two unauthorised structures, storage of building materials, including breeze blocks, roof tiles and cut timber. The list isn't intended to be exhaustative, but give an indicative view of what's happening here. Storage of ladders, scaffolding, etc. in the land, in the area demarcated in the attached plan. The use shall only be agricultural. We're looking at the demolition of the two unauthorised structures, removing the resultant debris from the land in its entirety, clear the land of all material used to create the trackways and hard standings, restore the land to its former condition and contours pertaining before the unauthorised excavation and tipping commenced, including the removal of walls and reinstating the watercourse so that the ponds are connected to it. Remove all paraphernalia associated with the residential use, including play equipment, wheelie bins, benches, parasols and chairs, etc. Reseed the excavated area following the required reinstatement with a meadow mix, and to remove the conifer hedge parallel to the M4 and all non-native shrubs present in the site. In terms of, there's two additional steps which we'll be able to work with additional parties, but we couldn't include in a notice, is to reinstate the hedge adjacent to the towpath because it falls out of the ownership of the family that own Ash Tree Cottage, and to reinstate the land on the M4 verge, again, for the same reasons. Looking at this is the area proposed for the action. It doesn't really show it in very much detail because of the scale of the site. You can see that the towpath on there, the red line actually falls to the back of the towpath and is set back from it by a few metres. In short, there's been excavation there which has undermined the towpath. There's a drop, doesn't really show it here, but a couple of metres in places, and it's suggested that it's going to require a gabion basket type structure to basically support the towpath and the side of the canal. The reason for recommending the injunctive approach is, as I say, it is open to committee. One is to say we've served a notice already and it's not had the desired effect. But if we did serve a second notice, potentially it would open up a fresh round of appeals which would delay remedying the harm here, whilst the injunctive approach allows us to address this and the wider harm that's caused. Essentially that covers it. If committee's got any questions, by all means fire away.
Thank you. We now have the speaker, Mr. Andrews.
Thank you. I'm a little bit shocked to be here today because obviously my presence wasn't requested personally. They asked my partner to come here and represent me, which she doesn't do. I've always made it clear that any correspondence and an email was sent to the appropriate people that if they needed to contact me direct, and then I would reply. That hasn't happened. Also today, I'm supposed to be in work and my partner Michelle is supposed to have a hospital appointment. The information we've provided was for next year, not today. Yeah, we've had an email which is dated on the 20th for the 20th year 27. So I've had to lose a day's work, a couple of nights sleep, and my partner, who had a very important hospital appointment, has had to cancel that to come here. A lot of these allegations are totally unfounded. My property complies with the necessary building approval. The buildings are not illegal. And my property matches all other properties around there. They have conifer trees, they have hard standings for several parks. We've lived in that property for 19 years, a very happy 19 years. We've brought a family up in there, and this just seems so unfair. And we've had children running around all of our lives there, and yet they want us to install a barbed wire fence as if it's called, you know, a prison camp. How can anybody want a barbed wire fence where children play? That field has never had any agricultural ties, it's never had any animals on there, it's been there for the sole use of the enjoyment of the household. And I'm totally... And also, the entrances, the legal entrances, I have certificates which prove that. I have got leeway agreements put in place with Western Power, who bring heavy plant onto my land to service the pylons there and the transformers. I have allowed on several occasions, and I have got proof, photographic proof, but as I said, I wasn't even expected to be here today, when the council have used contractors, and I've always allowed the contractors to park on my land. Those contractors represent the council. That's on when they were resurfacing the canal path that Cycle Wales paid for. And when they did the ash dieback, I had at times 5 or 6 large agricultural vehicles parked on my land, which I allowed. As I said, the openings there are legal. I'm totally shocked. I'm not used to speaking in an environment like this. It's been a happy home for us. It's just for some strange reason we seem to be getting persecuted. As regards the conifer hedge, that hides the motorway. Yeah, it stops all the pollution from the motorway, and as I said, all the next adjoining properties have got conifers. We've tried to make it as habitable as we can. We love living there. All I want to do is improve the place. Yeah, the building materials, what I use personally, if I need to construct a wall and stuff like that, it's down to building regs. Yeah, I am an experienced builder. I've got no plans to overdevelop the land or anything like that. I just enjoy it being there. So I want to leave my house for the future generations to enjoy where we live. We think it's a treasure to live there. Joe, the public, who always comes past and speaks to me, I always communicate with them. They've only ever said good things about what I'm trying to achieve there. And the separate piece of land, there are 2 pieces of land. One is totally detached from Ash Tree Cottage, which we bought recently to stop anybody else purchasing. There was a travelling community and wanted to buy it, but obviously we didn't want that, so we had to put ourselves into debt to actually buy that piece of land, which I bought 3 years ago. I've got a big mortgage on the property. Yeah, I'm a simple man with simple needs. I'm just trying to improve an area so everyone else can benefit from it. No hindrance whatsoever. Yeah. Right. Oh, right. Okay. So, sorry. Yeah. Obviously, the canal path has been widened itself by the council, which has been notified in the papers when they did the tarmac and etc. I've done no underpinning. Any slopes on my land are the same as elsewhere on the canal. If I was given chance, I could have brought proof of showing what the council have done in other places and never raised an issue. They have fitted gabions along the other side of the canal. My contours are the same as the neighbours, the drops, the slopes. Yeah, all I've done is remove soil so I could reseed it and put it back so it's aesthetically perfect. All I want to do is carry on doing what I'm doing, causing no nuisance to anybody and just to improve the area. Thank you very much for your time.
Okay, thank you. Would you like to turn your mic on? Okay. Thank you. Now, do you have any questions or any answer those? No? Okay. Members? Okay, do members have any questions? Mr. Watkins?
Chair, with this application, are we deciding in regards to the recommendations on, on page 82, item 14, A or B, or both? Which are the officers recommending?
That's correct, but essentially an officer will be recommending to go down the injunctive route as set out in the report. But yeah, in terms of committee's options, it could be A, B or both.
Seems like going down the injunction route, that's what the officers would recommend. Yeah. Okay. Okay, is anybody else wish to speak on this? No, sorry. Please. Okay, so we got no hands raised. Nobody in the room. Okay, shall we go for all those in favour of the officer's recommendation? Do we have a proposer? Sorry, yeah. Proposer, officer's recommendation, seconder? And Councillor Perkins. All those in favour of officer's recommendations, please raise your hands. So that's unanimous. Okay, thank you. Oh, okay, sorry, we've got a report on the appeals. So that's finished on that, yeah. That's passed there for the officers. Officers' recommendation's been passed.
So it means officers have been authorised to either serve an enforcement notice or commence injunctive proceedings with regards to the officer report. You wouldn't be able to appeal the injunctive proceedings, but you'd be able to represent your case at that time. Okay.
Thanks, Chair. Moving on to the appeals report. Obviously, we've done the usual report citing the appeal decisions. And as we've previously advised, on HMO appeal decisions, our intention is to report them back to you in a slightly more detailed form, just so you can understand the decisions better and the reasons the inspector made them. So the last one I did was back in March Planning Committee, when I reported in a little more detail the outcome of the appeal at 33 Walmer Road. That appeal was allowed, if you recall, and related to bedroom size in particular. A bedroom on that one that was actually below the licensing standard, and the inspector still thought it was okay. But we know from that past report at 33 Walmer Road that the inspector took into account the communal living spaces and the configuration of the bedroom, which was quite square, it had a nice window, high ceilings, etc. So moving on to the decision we've had more recently, I'll share some photos which may jog the memories of those that were present. Okay. So it's 28 Bringlass Road. We reported it to Planning Committee in September 2025. You'll see in your agendas what it was for, but it was for change of use of a property from a residential dwelling to 5-bedroom HMO. Officers recommended that the members grant it, subject to conditions. Members overturned it for 2 reasons primarily. The first one was parking. My recollection of the meeting was that the local councillor represented views quite strongly on the parking issues locally, and officers obviously did their usual assessment on matters such as this in terms of sustainability. It's very sustainable. It's a stone's throw from Malpas Road and its facilities. And then the second reason that members were concerned was room size and configuration at first floor. So let me remind you of that. Let's go to the plan. Okay, so this was the existing layout of the property that we showed you at the time. Keep your eye on that bedroom at the front at first floor when I flick through now to the proposed. So again, back to existing and proposed. So, don't know what's happened there, sorry. Oh, there we go. So members agreed a reason for refusal on those 2 bedrooms specifically. So we formulated a form of words, and you'll be happy to hear the inspector agreed with members on the 2 first floor bedrooms, disagreed on parking. So we're still not in a position to report an appeal decision where an inspector has agreed to refuse a HMO on parking. But certainly the issues with the bedrooms is interesting. So let's just quickly run through that because it's useful for further considerations. So the inspector observed that the 2 bedrooms on the first floor at the front of the property are modest size and irregular in shape, and this is key. So the presence of the existing bay window and the subdivision of the original space results in awkward projections within both rooms. In one of the bedrooms, the usable floor space is further constrained by a chimney breast and dog-legged entrance area, resulting in part of the floor space needed for circulation rather than usable space. And collectively, these factors result in inefficient and fragmented layouts that significantly limit the functional floor space of both rooms. And in the absence of substantive evidence to the contrary, she was not satisfied that these bedrooms would comfortably accommodate a single bed alongside essential furniture without leading to cramped and constrained accommodation. And so the appeal was dismissed, okay, on that reason alone. So in terms of next steps, open to the applicant, just out of interest, that will be to reapply and put that bedroom potentially back to 1 or figure out some other configuration. And in terms of our ongoing assessments, we're getting a bigger picture now of what inspectors consider important enough, I suppose, to dismiss an appeal. So like I said, we had the one last time. The room was smaller than licensing standards. The The inspector considered it okay because it was square, high ceilings, had a window, and the communal space was good. This one, the inspector has said they meet the licensing standards on floor space, but the configuration makes them cramped and unusable, lacks that functionality in practice. So those two decisions, again, are interesting for us to take forward, because inevitably you're going to see more HMOs coming forward to committee, and hopefully that report will be useful. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, everyone. It's been a long one today. So, yeah.
Sorry about the comment. It's nice to see something happen in Welsh Government. What concerns me, it's not consistent. I'm wondering whether we need to look at both Walmer Road and that one to see what is the difference. It sounds to me as though it's the amenity space within the room. Walmer Road had high ceilings, so you got to put the wardrobe on the roof, on the ceiling, I suppose. Do you? I don't know.
No,
I think your clothes from up there.
I think there is, obviously you've seen a HMO today. You've had to consider a HMO where the room size has been discussed. And conscious of this decision, we went back to the applicant and asked them to show us that on plan that a single bed, a desk or some sort of side table, a space to arrange clothes or hang clothes can be laid out in that room. I mean, the one you saw today was more straightforward because it was square, it had a nice big window, etc. Clearly, in this case, the inspector did not like the configuration of these rooms because they're not square. And the usable space was therefore prejudiced, and she could not see how a single bed would fit. Notwithstanding licensing standards, which was also discussed today in terms of their relevance, she makes absolutely clear they are separate. Okay, so we're going to be receiving more. We've got appeals pending on other HMOs. So our plan is to continue in this way. When we get those appeal decisions through, we'll run through them with you. It's just helping us build a picture of the robust reasons that we can potentially find HMOs unacceptable. That's if they make it to planning committee at all, of course.
Chair, one other question. Which room did they consider was unsuitable? Was that part of the original one or the new one? Because there was a chimney breast.
Yeah. On the plan we're looking at now, so on the right-hand side, if I can get my cursor to stay. Okay, so these two rooms were a subdivision of a much larger room that existed with that bay window on the front. So it's those two rooms, both unacceptable. Both those, it was the reason for refusal that both those rooms were unacceptable, and the inspector agreed.
Councillor Horton?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's just for my knowledge, really, and for the other councillors. When a decision like this is made by one inspector, can we, or do they then, as like in law, use it as evidence to support another decision? So, for example, if the inspector that's there now changes tomorrow, and then changes the day after, then changes the day after, obviously their standards will change. Are we, by we, I mean the royal we as in you, able to then evidence this decision to show that this decision was made at this point? Can you look at this and take this into account in that decision-making process? Or do they just go, nah, I'm the boss, this is my decision, this is how I'm going to play it?
I mean, is this going to set the precedent?
Yeah, and I understand what you're saying. We can and do use appeal decisions. You would have seen us referencing other appeal decisions in previous reports. We do it because they are material considerations. So this one now, if we find another similar scheme before us with these awkwardly configured rooms, yes, this could potentially be relevant and we could cite it as a material consideration.
Okay, thank you. The other thing which I find, I know I find frustrating, and the other councillors do as well, I'm sure, is that there's a standard which should be adhered to, yet when we say you're below that standard, yet an inspector can come in and say, actually, it's okay, but it is below, but we'll let it go anyway. It's almost like you wouldn't stick your car in an MOT station, and the guys say, oh, well, yeah, your wheel's falling off, but it's all right today, so we'll let that go. It just doesn't seem as if there's an adherence to the standards which are in place to help us make decisions.
I think for you, as members of the planning committee, it's not the be-all and end-all. It's not for us either. So, the licensing standards are a guide for us, but they're not the be-all and end-all. You can look at general amenity considerations. Has it got a nice window with a decent outlook? Is it of a configuration where you could realistically see a single bed and a little desk and a little wardrobe? Is it like, it's not some sort of manufactured awkward layout to maximise the bedroom on plan, when in actual fact the floor space is not particularly usable in practice. These are all things that you and us can consider.
Can I ask, working in conjunction with licensing, could we pass this over to licensing so because they're all about the room sizes, we know they stick to the room size, can we also pass this to licensing to look at when they review the license, the configuration and usable floor space?
They are entirely separate regulatory processes, Chair. We have to let EH licensing do their thing, and we'll do ours. And it is possible sometimes we'll come to different conclusions, but that we can do that because they are separate regulatory processes.
All right, thank you. If that's it, it's been a long one. So thank you very much for attending today. Thank you all. Thank the officers.